Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very successful entrepreneur from Santa Barbara, California, USA, Mr. Stuart Jenkins. Stuart, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Looking forward to visiting.
Thank you. Stuart is the founder and chief executive officer of Blumaka, which is a leading manufacturer of recycled foam products, redefining performance and sustainability in the footwear industry. So, Stuart, you began your journey in footwear while still in high school. What inspired you to partner with George Cole on the first Air Sole?
Really, I was trying to find a way to avoid going to college, and I thought I
Hmm.
could make shoes that were better. Shoes were the gear of the runner,
Yeah.
and you'd win shoes in races, and so you didn't get a choice about what shoes they gave you if you won a race or a little turkey trot or whatever. And I would modify them, and so because footwear was so important to running, it just became my passion.
Hmm.
And really hooking up with George Cole on the air shoe, it was just so fortunate. Really just one of those lucky moments in life.
Hmm.
I was reaching out for a sponsor. I wanted to run across the country. And his response was, well, my shoe won't make it across the street, let alone across the country. Why don't you help me?
Hmm.
And one thing led to another, and I did help him. And we eventually licensed that shoe or that technology to Reebok. And you know, I've stayed in footwear since that time. But
Wow.
so much of life is, I guess, luck or But I was a 17-year-old kid looking to run across the country, so
Amazing.
the United States.
Yeah.
So I had something that I was trying to do.
Correct. Correct. What an amazing story. Stuart, you've been innovating for over 40 years. How do you keep your creative energy alive over so many decades, over so many startups, and with so many patents?
Um, I think I've just never gotten satisfied with the way things are, and I've always had this very optimistic belief that the people that are closest to a product or
Mm.
closest to a situation can make it better. I've always said that you have to have the humility to know that you don't know it all, but you also have the confidence to say, I think I can make the world a better place.
Hmm.
And I still get up every morning like a little kid going to the playground because I love this notion that things can get better, the world
Mhm.
can get better, and I have a tiny little postage stamp of a life where I can make my part of the world better.
Very
And
interesting.
I've just never gotten bored with trying to get better.
Amazing. You also describe success as being fueled by innovation, hard work, enduring relationships, and a healthy disregard for failure. Can you share a personal story that illustrates this philosophy?
Well, I mean, let's go back to the air shoe. First of all, in 1978, there were no air shoes. Nike Air did not exist.
Mm.
And and as I was trying to do this, I remember people in the footwear industry, older
Mhm.
people, seasoned executives telling me, why would you ever want to put air in shoes?
Mm.
Why would you do that? And to the point where I took this air shoe technology to 94 shoe companies who told me that it would not sell. They didn't want it.
Wow.
Scram, leave. And and yet through 8 years and 94 rejections, I persisted because I believed it was a good idea. And so that taught me to have while respectful, a healthy disregard for the people with the most knowledge. I mean,
Mhm.
working with the early days of Hoka, everybody was trying to make a running shoe,
Mm.
and they would essentially say, my shoe is like Nike, but better.
Mm.
And with Hoka, Jean-Luc and Nico came along and said, we're not going to make a running shoe that looks like Nike. We're not going to do what all of the laboratories and all the expensive research scientists and all of the R&D budgets of these Adidas and Nike and Reebok tell you to do. We're going to make a shoe that we think works better. And so they
Mm.
had a complete disregard for the past, and they said, let's look at this totally differently.
Wow.
And so I think those those two examples are where if you're going to innovate, you are unlikely to innovate if you simply try to do what everybody else is doing
Mm.
just a little bit better. You
Amazing.
have to go off, and I've often said the best training for being a good innovator is being the least popular kid in middle school
Mm.
because you have to be willing to be on the outside group. You have to be willing to play alone, and you have to be willing to let people make a little bit of fun of you. I mean,
Mm.
when we were first doing Hoka, people were like, who's going to wear those big, fat, ugly shoes? Well, guess what? Everybody is wearing those
Correct.
big shoes now.
Correct. Great response. Stuart, let's now talk about Blumaka. What was the spark that led you to found Blumaka? And how did you identify foam waste as the biggest pollution problem for footwear?
Well, the problem became very apparent as I was making products. I was the head of product development for Deckers, which owned the UGG brand and of course the
Hmm.
Hoka brand. And going to the factory, I love footwear, as you can tell.
Mm.
But you go out behind the factory and you would just see piles of foam were as big as the factory.
Mm.
And and that didn't feel very good, frankly. I didn't want to take a picture of that and bring it home and show my kids what I
Mm.
was doing.
Mm.
And you don't see any of it in the advertisements for footwear brands. They never show you a pile of the foam they're throwing away, right?
Mm.
It's always this glossy environmental picture. You're running in the mountains or you're running down the street,
Yeah.
clean, beautiful. They don't show you the piles of trash. And I'm also a capitalist, and I believe that markets, while not perfect, markets are the best way to solve major problems that we have yet invented.
Mm.
And so if you look at that problem and you see only a problem, and I could have put on a protest vest or sign and said, please stop wasting foam. But I think that oftentimes the problem is the solution.
Mm.
And if there's all of this waste foam, and I'm holding a little bit of this
Yeah.
stuff, it's beautiful foam, it's clean foam, it's some of the highest performance foam in the world. The only thing that happened to this piece of foam, it wasn't shaped right or it did not fit inside a shoe.
Mm.
And you say, if there's all of this foam that is so high quality out there,
Mm.
why isn't it the solution? All you have to do is find a way to put it back together
Yeah.
and utilize its performance properties of cushioning, shock attenuation, lightweight, durability. And so it's a massive problem. You can't melt down foam like you can a water bottle because it's
Mm.
like a scrambled egg. Once it's exploded, it's a two-part chemical. You'll never melt it down and make something new. So you have to
Mm.
use it as foam. And if you look at a insole or a midsole that we make, you can see that the
Yeah.
foam is visible in it, or
Mm.
an insole, the foam is visible.
Yeah.
Um, and so I guess the inspiration was I wasn't proud of what was going on. And I said, I think the problem is the solution.
Mm.
Rather than powderizing this or throwing it away or burning it or burying it, we can make great product from it. And really, what Blumaka has done is taken waste foam and I think the thing that will surprise your listeners, we're making foam that will actually do a better job of cushioning shock, cushioning pounding, and lasting longer than
Mm.
the foam that we're grinding up because we have to put it back together also with a foam.
How interesting. And what was the biggest initial challenge in convincing brands and athletes to adopt your products?
I don't know that it's one. I would say the biggest challenge that we faced was I started building a factory 2 months before COVID hit
Mhm.
because if you're going to change the world, you can't do what the world has always done.
Mhm.
And one of the limitations on recycling foam is everybody's trying to run recycled foam through the same system that is creating toxic, polluting waste foam. And so we had to build a factory that could handle granulated foam.
Mhm.
And I think building the factory was one of the biggest hurdles. One, I couldn't get over and see my factory
Mhm.
for 3 years. So that was a hurdle. But I think convincing companies they they are so chained to their
Mhm.
existing supply chain, which is in the case of foam, is so predicated on being able to waste foam,
Mhm.
throw it away, that it's hard to break into their supply chain
Mhm.
because why would the the footwear manufacturing companies want to buy a recycled foam from me when they're making a foam that they can just throw out
Correct.
themselves?
Correct.
And I think there was also a disbelief that recycled foam could be high performance. They
Mhm.
had always thought of it as cheap and lower quality, and they also felt that it had to be much higher in price. So
Mhm.
I guess the challenge was one, building a factory that can do it. Number two, breaking into the supply chain. And number three, getting it priced to the point where we were competitive with
Mhm.
the incumbent technology. And four, we began to prove that we could outperform it in certain ways. The
Very
only metric
interesting.
where we can't perform better is we are not lighter weight than the lightest weight foam for a running midsole.
Mhm. Nearly 1,000 world-class athletes and 13 NFL teams use your products now. How did the adoption story unfold?
Well, we created this insole that has a non-slip top cover. So
Hmm.
instead of putting fabric on the top, we put a material here, and you can see the
Yeah,
recycled material
yeah.
that has a different coefficient of friction than your sock. So you're not sliding around inside your shoes.
Mm.
And I gave it to one professional baseball player, uh, a guy named Mike Yastrzemski, and I just waited to see what happens. I didn't call him. It took him 2 months. He calls me back before spring training and said, "Send me two more pair."
Mhm.
I did. He gets to spring training. "Can I get five more pair?" I sent them. A few days later, "Can I get five more?" I sent them. A few days later, "Can I get five more?" I said, "Mike, you have every insole I've made." He said, "Well, you better light up the factory because the guys love these insoles." And
Wow.
then one of these Major League Baseball teams tested our product and found that 90% of the athletes could run faster,
Mm.
80% could stop faster, start faster. And if I told you that there was an insole that would make you run faster, you would say, "Stuart, you're full of baloney." It's
Mm.
hard to believe.
How
But
interesting.
that's what the data says when they tested 200 pro athletes. I didn't test it.
Yeah.
It became a word of mouth item in Major League Baseball.
Mm.
Then trainers in college football heard about it. And now the NFL trainers have heard about it. And so the fact that we have over 1,000 professional athletes buying our product, not giving, we've never paid
Mhm.
an athlete to wear our product.
Mm.
We've never gone out and had a team endorse us to get free product.
How
Yeah, it
interesting.
just shows that you can take a recycled material and make world-class product.
What an
And
amazing story.
the other part of it is that our insoles made from recycled materials, the cushioning in this insole will last 1,000 miles.
Wow.
Many of the insoles that come in your high performance running shoes,
Mm.
they pack out or become flat in 30 miles or less.
Mm.
So we're lasting 15 to 20 times longer, which
Wow.
protects the athlete. But it was really word of mouth and performance that drove us
Mm.
into the professional ranks.
Amazing. You've
I
also
need to
been,
get into cricket, right?
yeah,
That's what I
absolutely.
need to get into.
I think you need to come to India with your products, because
I
there's
would
a lot
love
of
to
sport
find a
here now.
I'd
Uh,
love to find a way to come to India.
Tell me, Stuart, you've been recognized as a pioneer in sustainability. What do you think sets your innovation apart from others in the footwear industry?
Well, I think we're really a pioneer in sustainability because we're a pioneer in recycling foam.
Mm,
I think what sets it apart is that when you look at my products, you can see that it's recycled. I don't know if you
yeah,
see
yeah,
that.
you can see that.
So a lot of people, when they're talking about recycling, they're talking about carbon footprint or things that aren't visible. And my old friend at Nike, a guy named Rob Strasser, used to say, if you can see it, feel it, and touch it, you can sell it. And there's a lot of hocus pocus and a lot of marketing around green and sustainability. But with Blue Maca, you see what you get.
Yeah.
You can see that it's 85% recycled.
Mm,
And I think that when you when it's so simple that a sixth grader can understand it, I think that that helps make us a leader in
mm,
sustainability or in
mm,
recycling.
Well said. It's also believed that, or many people believe that sustainability could compromise performance, but you're saying that your products last 1,000 miles. How do you prove that the two can coexist
Well, the only way you can prove it is
by using it?
put by using it, and then, for example, we have 1,000 mile guarantee on our insoles. A customer who weighed 265 pounds, he was a runner, had documented that he'd run 800 miles, and he sent a pair of insoles back and said, I think my cushioning may be degrading. So we tested the insoles right where he said they were degrading, and we'd only lost 7% of our cushioning
Wow.
after 800 miles. And failure is usually when you lose 15%. So we quite literally will send people out. We had a guy walk the entire Pacific Crest Trail over 2,000 miles in one insole. We
Hmm.
tested him before he left, when he came back. We had a runner athlete in Colorado go 1,400 miles. We tested her insoles before they left, when they come back. So we do real world testing in independent testing labs.
Hmm.
I also think when you talk about performance, you do have to be alert and say, where do you use your technology? We would not be a great foam midsole to put on a shoe that you were going to try to win the Olympic marathon in.
Hmm.
But if you're trying to run a 3 hour marathon or a 2 hour and 45-minute marathon, we would be a great midsole.
Hmm.
If you're standing on your feet all day working in a factory, we would be a great midsole. If you're doing something casual or flip-flops or sandals or recovery product, we would be a great performance product. So
Music.
if lightweight is your only performance criteria, that's where we would not perform as well.
Yeah.
That's a great place for virgin foam, but that's only 5% of the market. We're really a better performing product for 95% of the applications.
Incredible. Moving on, Stuart, what lessons have you raised about raising awareness for sustainable innovation in such a competitive industry?
Well, I think one of the things, that's really hard. We're so small and the marketing budgets of companies are so big. I scratch my head and I also shake my head that some brands can do some little thing and they market the heck out of it. One of the best things we have done is we've done a collaboration with Allbirds on this
Hmm.
shoe
Yeah.
called the Remix. And because Allbirds is known for sustainability, it really helps talk about
Mm.
Blue Maca. We also have had our own brand. We've just said, hey, we're going to make a Flex. We call
Mm.
this Flex sheepskin, which is a B grade sheepskin,
Yeah.
salvaged leather. And, this Flex brand might be the most sustainable footwear ever made because
Wow.
it's so much recycled content. So
Mm.
we have to break through by making great product. We break through by the fact that world-class athletes buy us, but we don't have a megaphone to run ads on TV or during an
Mm.
NFL game telling people how great we are. So you're just trying to dress the mouse up in an elephant
Correct.
costume and get enough attention by building world-class product that
Mm.
people take notice.
Very interesting. So I have time for two more questions for you. Um, what has been the most rewarding moment for you since you founded Blumaka?
Uh, Boy, there's a lot of rewarding moments. I think the day we launched Flex,
Hmm.
and really because people said you couldn't do it, and we made our own product because we had to. I think the day that Allbirds launched their product, which was a day I will never forget, you know, August 18th goes down in history. And maybe the third one would be sitting in the World Series and watching a team that was wearing our product.
Wow.
They invited the team invited me to a World Series game. They won the World Series, and I knew a bunch of those athletes were wearing Blumaka, a little brand that no one in the world had heard of, and they were celebrating wearing our product, even though it was kind of a secret. It really felt good to know that we were on the biggest stage in baseball and that we were part of that winning team.
How amazing. And my last question for you. You've been in the footwear business since you were 17 years old. If you could redesign this industry from scratch, what would it look like?
Oh, that is such a difficult question. I think that what it would look like is that 40 years ago, we would have been designing for sustainability.
Hmm.
I think every shoe, every performance running shoe should last 1,000 miles instead of 100 or 150.
Hmm.
And I think that from the beginning, we would have been a lot more thoughtful about the environment, whether it was water, whether it was waste foam, and that when we transported our industry to Asia, that we would have been a lot more respectful of the human capital, the people
Yeah.
that were in our industry. And
Hmm.
by the way, I think our industry has done an amazing job in many ways, but I think we were a little bit cavalier and a little bit selfish along the way. And But hindsight is a very good thing. What
Correct.
I hope is that in 40 years they say, "Hey, that guy Stuart Jenkins got it right and started building something that's made a big difference."
Hmm.
There's enough waste foam right now coming out of the athletic footwear industry for me to make 2.5 billion shoes
Wow.
or 5 billion insoles. And I hope that when it's all said and done, we prove that problem is solved, that
Amazing.
there is never any foam made for footwear that is not used in footwear, that we clean up after ourselves. And so I'm really more worried about what the footwear industry looks like in 40 years than what it could have looked like 40 years ago. I'm not sure that's responsive to your
Yeah,
question, but
no, it
that's
is a
kind of where
great
my head is.
response. It is a great response. But on that note, Stuart, and your incredible story of the 1,000 mile shoe, which is also sustainable and hopefully very, very good on the knees. Thank you for talking to me about your incredible journey. Thank you for speaking to me about Blumaka. I think what you have created is something you will be remembered for forever. Thank you for speaking to me. I hope to see you soon in Asia and in India. All the very best to you.
Well, thank you for the time, and I would love to come and visit you in India. It's a place I
Thank you.
haven't been, and I would love to get there.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.